Hey guys, welcome to the latest episode of Beyond the Tape, a podcast that focuses on people doing rad things within the mountain bike industry in Australia, whether that be media, athletes, or people just behind the scenes in the industry, which is one of our guests today. But before we move on to them, let's have a quick chat about the supporters of this podcast. I am stoked to have Trek supporting the podcast. Man, they just got me a new slash down here and rode it on the weekend at the downhill, and I'm so stoked to be on a bike that works so damn well. That active braking pivot just allows the bike to track so damn well when I'm on the brakes, which is a major bonus because I'm on those brakes a lot. It tracks well, super playful, ended up on a large, even though I'm 187 centimeters tall, just to keep the bike poppy and playful. Make sure that you go into any of your local Trek dealers and hit them up about a slash, because damn, that bike just does everything. Tailored trails. I mean, I am seriously missing Tasmania right now. Beautiful trails, beautiful environment, beautiful scenery, beautiful everything. The one thing about Tasmania is getting down there and organising everything. That's an absolute pain in my ass. So Tailored Trails is actually a company that goes and does all that for you. They can do a custom package for groups of up to 18 people on their custom built shutters, trailers and racks, and they just take all the hassle out of it. So all you have to do, buy a carton of beers, buy a carton of water, buy a carton of whatever makes you happy, and ride your bike. It's simple as that. This episode is actually brought to you by 100%. I have been wearing their status helmet for a while now. It's the only thing that fits my melon. Super comfortable. I'm currently still talking to you, so it's obviously protected my head in the numerous crashes I've had. Love their stuff. I can't say enough how good the 100% gear is, especially their protective gear. I'll talk about their pads next time because damn, they're comfy. Keeping me way less naked and keeping people, a lot of people out of therapy is Franked Mountain Bike Apparel. They are a premium mountain bike apparel company out of WA. They specialize in lightweight, high-tech jerseys at a good price. None of this $400 for a t-shirt that you can get the same material from Kmart. This is proper riding stuff. Super light, super breathable, and super tough. Love it. Dirt Surf and mud guards keep the mud out of my eyes. They're made from 100% recycled materials, come in heaps of custom designs, heaps of eye-catching graphics, and they're 100% recyclable as well. So do your bit, keep the mud out of your eyes, keep the rubbish out of the ground, and grab one of those mud guards because damn, they're good. Crush Oz is 100% Australian-made bike cleaner and degreaser. Man, their new shine stuff that they've got from Carol and Buchanan makes my bike so sparkly I have to run tinted lenses in my goggles. Otherwise, the sun just gets in my eyes. Absolutely love their stuff. Support those guys. Grab one of their bike care buckets and you'll never look back. So damn good. Fist handwear, keeping my hands protected and keeping me gripping the bars. They are the most comfortable gloves I've ever worn. Super eye-catching designs. You can get everything from plain black gloves to Dinos, Machinos's crazy sugar skulls. Like, they've got everything. Super comfortable, super grippy, and super protective. Whenever you're at one of those online stores, make sure you use Beyond the Tape at checkout and get 10 to 15% off. I almost forgot NS Dynamics, the premium surface suspension center in Australia. I can't say enough. I'm looking at getting some new Olin's forks for the slash. Super simple to set up, super plush, and man, more grip than I could ever ask for. Anyway, that's enough dribbling. We are chatting with Nigel Reeve from NSR Suspension down in Tassie. Man, this guy's had a life. Zero plans, just kind of gone with the wind. Worked for some of the best mechanics. Worked for some of the best riders, and man, this is a story, and we only touched the surface. So hopefully I can get down to Tassie, have a few beers, and we go again. Anyway, as usual, grab beer, grab water, grab wine, grab whatever makes you happy, and enjoy the episode.
Cool. You happy to kind of jump straight in and keep on chatting?
Yeah.
Sick. Well, Nigel Reeves, welcome to the podcast. We finally made it happen.
Thanks for having me. It's been talking about it for a long time, but took a while to get the schedules to match up.
And when I saw there was like an Optus network outage the other day, I'm like, it's going to get delayed again.
Oh, dude, that was nuts. Like, I couldn't even call you to tell you that it wasn't going to happen. I was just like, I'll just have to message you tomorrow and be like, yeah, sorry, dude.
It's all good. I work with mountain bikers. It's all good. Like, these things happen, man. It's like trying to herd cats. It's the best.
Yeah, pretty much. Professional cat herder.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us a brief introduction as to who you are and what you're kind of doing at the moment.
I'm just some guy who grew up mountain biking and mountain bike racing. Became a bike shop mechanic and kind of morphed from there into doing suspension and also wrenching at races, various World Cup teams. And when I got sick of the travel, I somehow ended up in Maydena. So here we are.
What a shit spot to end up.
Well,
so
I was a bit picky.
Oh yeah, you would have been for sure. So how did you kind of get into wrenching and racing from the start? Let's wind it all the way back.
Got into wrenching because that was the only way I'd have a bike to ride or race. And got into racing because a couple of mates at school who were into road racing, were like, yeah, you're nothing unless you're racing, sort of thing. Like, because I guess 15-year-olds don't go out and ride 100 Ks on their road bike because it's fun, like it's the competitive aspect. So I went to a mountain bike race and I thought, yeah, this is pretty cool. And there goes 25 years of my life. Boom.
Yeah, that moment
ruined me.
What were you kind of racing on at the time? What was your first mountain bike?
It was a fully rigid giant Sedona. This is like 1994 or something. So back in the dark ages. I think they just invented the wheel.
It was wooden wheels and 5 spokes at the time.
Yeah, and it was kind of a choice between mountain bikes and horses. I kind of, pretty much the same thing.
Was it a big sport at the time when you kind of got into it, or was it still emerging? Like,
in Australia, it was obviously pretty tiny. It was non-existent where I grew up in northern New South Wales. But I mean, at the time, the internet was printed on paper in those days, and there was you'd get magazines out of the US like Mountain Bike Action and Bike Mag and stuff, and that was obviously like the mid-90s boom of mountain biking. So you could see via that there was like this massive thing going on, just not in northern New South Wales.
And that would have been if you're going down the wrenching route, and I mean, the riding would have been cool, but at that time in mountain biking, there were so many unique frames and suspensions and just weird tech coming out at the time.
Yeah, that was really cool. Like right through until, I don't know, like the mid-noughties or something like that. It seemed like every time there was a downhill World Cup, someone would find a new way to build a mountain bike and add more shocks to it or whatever, and you just be literally just blown away. Like, whoa! I didn't think it could be that cool. So it's probably tech nerd heaven in those days, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think that's when I realized I was first a tech nerd. Was you'd look at like Bender's bike or something silly from then, and it's got 2 shocks in it, and it's got all this weird tech, and is definitely the highlight for tech heads.
Yeah, it seemed like there was no. I guess I was looking for the limit or the definition. And so people were just trying stuff. So yeah, every time you turned around, there was something new and interesting. Whereas you sort of put wheel size aside, it's like, what's the difference between a bike now and 10 years ago? It's just like, it's the same thing, but better. But not hugely different in the way that stuff was then, I think.
Just lasts longer now. Can you imagine taking like one of those old bikes down at Maydena?
Well, there was that thing where you went to a downhill race and it was perfectly normal seeing people walking down the side of the track holding the front half of their bike in one hand and the rear half in the other. And it was just like, oh yeah, that guy's head tube's just fallen off. That's pretty normal, right? Whereas if you saw that now, everyone would be all over the internet with it.
In for a warranty, for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Where did your racing ever kind of get serious? Were you taking the racing side of it serious?
I mean, most people, I think when they get into a start gate, like if they do it more than once, they start to get fairly serious, like at least in their own head. But I was rubbish at it, if that's what you mean. Like I was, yeah, definitely not a natural talent, that's for sure.
And so at what age did you kind of start? I mean, you've got the bike mag and you're riding bikes and everything, but when did you kind of realize that you wanted to head down the tech route? Probably
2 weeks into uni, where I dropped out because I wanted to work in a bike shop. Because I thought that would be really cool.
I applaud that decision. Like, I think it's one of the best decisions you could make.
I mean, I wasn't much good at what I was doing there either. So, yeah, I don't think it did me wrong.
What were you doing at uni? What did you enroll in?
Mechanical engineering. I like barely scraped enough points together to get let into a low level of that. And when I discovered in the first 2 weeks that I wasn't going to build my own mountain bike the next week, I was just kind of like, oh, this is shit.
Yeah. I'm going to take 4 years to do what I want to do now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of welded up in my shed, but as I speak, like, yeah.
Pretty much.
Where was your first job? Like, is that store still around, or where was your first kind of wrenching job?
That would have been Kenmore Cycles in western suburbs of Brisbane, and it's still there. It's still owned by the same guy, John, who was kind enough to take a bit of a risk and get me in on Saturdays to, I don't know, flatten bike boxes or something.
Yeah.
And I was good enough to do that, so I think I got upgraded to sweeping the floor or something, and so on.
That old school kind of in-shop apprenticeship style of...
Yeah. You hang around the bike shop and just be annoying until they give you stuff to do, and then you do enough of that so that they start having to pay you to do it, and then you just keep turning up.
You just infest the place with your essence.
Yeah, basically, you just make sure that they work out that the easiest thing to do is for them to give you a job, rather than just telling you to piss off.
Yeah. What so were you working strictly on mountain bikes and stuff like that from the get-go? Was there much roadie stuff, or did you have a kind of vast experience to all facets of bike mechanics?
I think at that period there was very few mountain bike only shops, and I mean, even nowadays I think there's, you'll see a hardcore mountain bike shop, but if a hardcore mountain bike customer comes in with his road bike, then normally don't tell him where to go. So yeah, it was very much a mixture of road, tri, commuter, kids BMXs with flat tires.
Yeah, staples.
So, yeah, which I quickly found out wasn't nearly as exciting as I'd hoped it was going to be.
Yeah, you enter the shop wanting to work on $14,000 bikes, and
just thinking that it's just going to be expensive mountain bikes all day long. And it's just like, yeah, no.
Was that like were you quite humbled by that, or did it put you off the industry at all, or the job?
No, I think I was just so keen that I just figured that like somewhere over the rainbow was a shop that only did high-end mountain bikes, and I was somehow going to end up there one day.
I think you got close. Well, you are close now.
Yeah. I did end up in a fairly high-end, 50% mountain bike shop in London.
Oh, you did?
About 4 or 5 years after that first job.
Okay.
And then went from there to Morzine, where there was just high-end mountain bikes. So got there eventually. It just took a while.
So you went from that shop straight to overseas, or you had an S Dynamics before that, or?
No, I basically went around a few different bike shops in Brisbane for 4 or 5 years, then got offered a job in a bike shop in London, which, I think email was no longer on paper. And I just had an email off the guy who my friend had worked for. And it was just literally just tell us when you're going to be at the airport and there's a job for you. So bought a one-way ticket and went over there, and then 5 years in London, and then went out to Morzine for a few seasons, and then came back and started NS Dynamics with Aaron, who's the current owner.
That's crazy. How did the job in London, did it just rock up, or how did?
It was, so a guy I'd worked with at Kenmore Cycles.
Yeah.
I don't know, he was in the UK for some reason. I can't remember why. And he had worked for this bloke. And the bloke was like, yeah, you're really good. If you know anyone else who's really good, just give him my number.
Yeah.
And literally just cold called this guy, explained myself. And he's just like, yeah, sweet. If Scott says you're good, you're good. So tell me when I need to pick you up at the airport. And I was just like, okay, sweet. And that was that, really. Kind of a bit of a jump.
Were you planning on heading overseas? Was it a goal of yours, or
No, I was planning for the weekend. Or if there was a good gig 2 weeks away or something like that, I might be planning for that. But that was about as far forward as I could think at that point, I think.
You just hopped on a plane to London in a week or so and lived
over there? No, it took about 3 months to get visas and stuff together. But yeah, I was just like, oh, I'm going to do this. just kind of did it.
Went with the flow.
Yeah, pretty much.
Was it a bit of a shock heading over to London, like a bunch of commuters, bunch of roadie type stuff, or what was the scene like over there?
Yeah, it was pretty mind blowing. I mean, just to go from Brisbane to a proper city, go from somewhere where you don't need to own jeans or a hoodie to somewhere where it's cold and rainy all the time.
True. Yeah.
It opened my eyes in a lot of ways. The BMX scene over there was super, super strong. You'd literally walk in the pub and there'd be 20 BMXs there. It was just something that was so alien to have such a good riding community. And that really, really made it for me, I think.
What year was that around?
2001.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So it would have been a real strong, streetish BMX scene.
Yes, street trails, things like Backyard Jam. There's a lot of Brits and North Americans going backwards and forwards in those days. But yeah, just massive crews of kids on bikes. It was super cool.
And the backyard trail scene and the hidden trail scene was huge. Dirt jump scene was big still back then, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it still is pretty big in the south of England. Because it rains so much, they've got 9 months to build jumps and 3 months to ride them. So they don't get worn down very much in the summer before they're built up even bigger. So yeah, places like Wisley and stuff like that are still going, I believe.
Yeah, that's sick. That would have been such a big mind change and game changing experience for you. And then go ahead. Sorry, there's a bit of a delay.
I don't think I was going anywhere with that.
Yeah, okay.
Just give you something to edit.
Give me something to Um, so were you working? How did you end up going from there to Morzine, which is one of the mountain bike meccas of the world, essentially?
So Brit downhillers had been like Morzine was like the holiday thing to do in the summer, and working in sort of fairly mountain bike oriented shops. I heard about this, and I had like a couple of weeks off, I think second summer there or something, and I put together a downhill bike because downhill bikes are cool, even if you're living in London, there's nowhere to ride it. And
Balfour. I remember Balfour's was super popular in London for a point there.
I had a big hit and then a Rocky Mountain RM9.
Oh, good.
Period, I think.
Yeah. Gussets everywhere.
Yeah. And at that time, I think you could get like a package deal for a few £100 for a week. Flights, get picked up from the airport, accommodation, guiding, a whole lot. And myself and Aaron Cairns were just like, yeah, like I've got £300, let's do it. And went back the next year, I think, and then the next year whilst we're out there, I was drinking beers with my mate Des, and he's just like, we've got to do a season next year. I was like, sweet, let's do that. And the plan was to do a season and then do a season in Whistler. And I left Morzine 10 years later. Never made it to Whistler. So,
yeah, I was about to say, like, if Morzine's the holiday area for England, then Canada is definitely the holiday area for the Australians. So,
yeah, definitely. But yeah, never made it to Whistler for a full season, just for work and stuff.
What's like a season in Morzine consist of? Like, what are you kind of doing there? Is it working like 2 times a week and the rest is for riding and partying, or?
Oh, dreams are free. That was like deep in the holiday industry, so it's pretty similar to doing ski season. So you all get packed in, I think there was 12 of us in a 3-bedroom apartment. You get one day off a week, which is Wednesdays, I think. But you get time off every day to ride. Like I used to work 8 till 10 and 6 till 10 or something like that.
Yeah.
So for someone like, when you're young, you're frothing, you're just like, oh sweet, I get to ride every single day, and you pretty much do. So yeah, dream come true, really.
The trails is mind blowing and just steep and good.
Oh yeah, when you come from a flat place like Australia, like learning to slow down before you need to, that's a pretty big learning curve.
Yeah, just straight off.
Yeah, you still see it with Aussie juniors going overseas now. Like they're good at going fast, but they underestimate the need to manage the speed.
Yeah, well, that's the thing I've always said, especially for Adelaide. Like, we have to generate speed, we don't manage it. And you go even going to Maydena, you're just like, oh, this is what brakes are for.
Yeah, and I should have probably used them like about 10 meters back.
Yeah, if they're still working. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you thing. Obviously, like, Morzine is renowned for European riders and European training camps and stuff. Was that where you started to meet kind of the people around World Cup teams and World Cup riders and stuff like that?
Yeah, so first season I was there, you'd sort of briefly, see the occasional sort of pro or World Cup racer or whatever. And then second season, I ended up living in a house full of Kiwis. Cameron Cole was there, Nathan Rankin.
Yeah.
Mike Skinner. Marshy, who's now Dean Lucas's mechanic, was Greg Minar's mechanic for a while. There was basically 10 of us in a, I don't know, 3-bedroom house.
That's insane.
But Justin Leov was there for a bit. It was, and we're like right in downtown Morzine. It was pretty fucking cool, to be honest.
That is sick. What a lineup of housemates.
Oh, dude, like you would literally, I can remember walking into the kitchen, like, 10 o'clock, just got out of bed sort of thing. And I don't know, there was like Justin Leov, Jared Graves, and God knows who else. And it's just like, oh, hi. Like, just, never met a pro rider before in my life. And it's like, oh, there's a whole bunch of them in the kitchen.
That's got to be a weird experience. Yeah. I'd be worried if they were in my kitchen right now. But like, that's got to be kind of like a humbling, weird experience, right? Just to walk out and see pretty much like some of the biggest names in the sport ever.
Yeah, it was weird. I'd sort of already, how you go through that experience of you should never meet your heroes, like meeting celebrities, because they turn out just to be humans and pretty disappointing humans usually. I'd kind of been through that in the music scene a little bit. So it wasn't the first time. But that said, when a few years after I moved to Morzine, I got offered a job at Santa Cruz Syndicate. And I can still remember to this day getting introduced to Petey and him going like, "Hi, my name's Steve," and me just going, "I know." just total and utter, like, just, ultra mega fan. So it's always a weird process to go through, like, when there's people that you're familiar with because of their exposure in the media, when you actually meet them and have to discover the human side of it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you can go right back to those bike mags and everything. You read all these stories. It's almost as if they're hero comic books in a way. Like you read about these guys and these heroes and stuff. And I'm lucky enough to have this experience a few times, and you just meet them and you're like, oh, you're exactly the same as my mate Joe down the road. Like, there's no big deal. You can just ride a bike real damn fast.
Yeah, and I guess it's just that important thing of getting over the awe of it, of like, oh fuck, this is that person from the internet or the magazine or whatever. Then you realize, like, being able to engage as a person, not like, oh, what's your favorite track? Like, like, just
how many clicks of rebound do you have?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that's actually something else. I don't want to make it all about me, but that's something else I've kind of thought about in the last couple of years. Is I'm asking the question, or a fan is asking the question once, but it's the 1,000th time that athlete has heard that question in the day, and I got to be accepting of that. Like,
yeah, and I mean, you see pro riders dealing with that all the time. And it's something that definitely makes their job a challenge. Just that constant public engagement, which probably seems really repetitive.
Yeah, that's why I chose not to be a pro downhill. It was just that aspect of this.
That's a fair point. I think you made a good decision.
So you are waking up to all these pros and these historical riders kind of sitting in your kitchen. How did you end up wrenching for them? Like, how's that transition go?
It took me a while, like a few years, to find out actually how it happened. Because from my end, I was just I was snowboarding up on Mont Cherie, like where the World Cup track is in Leger. One, I don't know, January, February, nice powder day. And my phone keeps ringing. So eventually I'm like, oh, okay, I'll answer it. I answer it, and it's like, oh, hi, it's Kathy Sessler from Santa Cruz Syndicate. And like basically offers me a job. And suffice to say, my mind is completely blown. Like, I'm just like, what has just happened? Like,
yeah. Just like prank calling me and just hung up on her. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'd ignored the call like 3 times or something already.
Dude.
And it turned out that she had asked Nigel Page, who's running CRC, because Kathy wanted a European-based mechanic. Pagey then asked Tony Seagraves, because Tony lived in Morzine or down the road from Morzine. Tony then hit Marshy up and said, "Oh, Marshy, you should do this." And Marshy's like, no, you should get Nigel to do it. So I don't know if Marshy didn't want it or something, but it got handballed to me, and I took it hook, line, and sinker.
I'm gonna have to edit all these name drops out. Hey, that's insane. Like, what a list of people to go through to get a job, and have Kathy just ring you up on the side of a mountain. That's insane.
Yeah, that whole first season, I was just completely overawed, to be honest.
What?
Like,
you know why they kind of recommended you? Like, did you ever find out the reasoning, or what do you think it was?
I'd helped Pagey out for a few summers because he was on a suspension brand that seemed to break fairly frequently, and so I'd fixed it for him and made like some proper Frankenforks, like transplanting parts that shouldn't have been transplanted and stuff like that to keep him riding. So maybe, I don't know, like maybe that, maybe being, I guess, at that time, one of the more techie bike mechanics that was kicking around Morzine or something. I'd also done, helped out a few Kiwi guys like Nathan Rankin.
Yeah.
At a few World Cups in like 06, 07. And I made the interesting choice of being the Kiwi national team mechanic at Fort William Worlds in 2007. 31 riders, 1 mechanic.
Of course.
Not an ideal ratio. So I was lucky to have my mate Phil just like turned up and helped me for the whole week and didn't get paid didn't get paid for it or anything like that. So I think it's one of those things where you get a taste of it working for free, and you sort of get to, you build up a bit of experience, so you're not completely flat-footed and cold first actual race you go to,
Not Phil Wood, was it? Different Phil.
No, different Phil.
Other Phil.
Phil the horse.
That's crazy. And yeah, it's funny how you say the working for free and getting that experience thing. Like, I think that's a very underrated a skill and work ethic these days.
Yeah, it at that point in time, it sort of seemed to be the only way in. I'd spoken to Andy Kiffin, who was Petey's mechanic back in the day, years before, and he had literally said that same thing, like you pair up with a rider and sort of work for free until you get the exposure. And even like the first few years working like for Syndicate, and then after that, you got paid sweet FA realistically. Whereas now, like, mechanics are going in and actually earning a living wage, which is super cool for them. They can, it's not such a life-changing choice because they get the opportunity to make a living at the same time.
That would have been just before the downfall of downhill, like that lull, or were you entering at that same?
Oh, I reckon it was bang on it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like 2008 was the season I did with Syndicate. Like Honda had just pulled the pin. And then I think 2009 GT pulled the pin. So yeah, it was sort of went right in at the wrong time, for sure.
But it still would have been worth it to be wrenching Because who was on the team at that time? It would have been Petey.
Syndicate was Petey, Minna, Rennie, and then Bryceland was like tacked onto the side. Like he was there with his mum and dad.
A couple of beers were consumed like around that time.
There was mid-practice beers in those days, dude.
That's
At least for the riders, not so much for the mechanics, but definitely for the riders.
yeah. Can you imagine doing that these days? I mean, I think some of the French people do because wine is so ingrained in their culture. But mid practice beers at a World Cup blows my mind.
Like I literally I have memories of like riders rolling out of the pits and just kind of like handing off their almost finished Budweiser or something like that. It's just like whole different sport.
Yeah, better for some in some ways, but glad it kind of turned in other ways.
You've got to have both. Like I think you've got to go through that cool growing period where everything's a bit wild. But ultimately, I mean, as I said, like I was virtually working for free in those days. Whereas now, people can make a decent living out of it. So there's definitely some good points about going proper pro.
Oh, 100%. And so you were wrenching for Petey? Or were you wrenching?
No, I was working for Rennie.
Okay. What was it like being Rennie's mechanic?
Eye-opening in many ways. It was really cool. Like he was really good in the sense that I never felt overwhelmed by the job. Like super understanding, always tried to minimize the amount of work for the mechanic. But like honestly, you'd be changing a tire at the end of practice and he'd look at you and like, what are you doing? It's like, just putting a new tire on. He's like, dude, I could get weeks out of that. Like, so to be honest, I think he eased me into it. Although I've never seen someone break things in so many different ways when things didn't quite go to plan.
Also,
I mean, like on track, not just randomly breaking things.
Just smashing things up. He's probably got a history of that. What was he breaking? Like, what was so odd and weird, like things that he'd break?
It was this is a bit of a list here. Give him a new world's bike at Valli Hoel to practice. You come back to the pits, he's done one run, the bike's hanging in your work stand and he's nowhere to be seen. And it's something along the lines of left-hand crank wrapped under the BB, no pedal, crank's gone into the chain guide, written off the chain guide and the chainring. A portion of the rear disc no longer there, 18 broken spokes in the rear wheel, and the swing arm all about 3/4 cut through.
You know what he did?
So
just
I tracked him down.
Cement mixer or something? Like
I tracked him down and asked him like if there was anything he wanted to explain to me. And his answer was, I found this really good line, but there's a rock, but I think I can wear it down. And 3 swing arms later, and a few pedals and cranks and so on, he did wear the rock down. He was right. Credit where credit is due.
What a mindset. Were you just shaking? What was your reaction? Were you just like, well, I guess my day is real busy now?
Yeah, well, I was the new kid, so I was just like, oh, I guess this is just what we do, It's not until you Rennie had been doing it for what 10 years at that point. So I just basically did what I was told. It's not until you've been there for a long time that you can turn around to a young rider and be like, dude, this is not cool. Pull your socks up.
You're not going to wear that rock down.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so intense. He's such an intense human.
Yeah, amazing bike rider.
Oh, dude, yeah, I was sad when he left the way he did. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think what people didn't understand is just because someone can ride a bike or race a bike for a living doesn't necessarily mean they want to.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, it's a choice that you alluded to earlier that you just literally chose not to. So it's not really any different to you, is it?
No, but like it's true. Like I know riders here that are so damn fast and they have so much talent. They just don't want to do that for a living. It makes sense.
It's a hard job. Straight out.
So who did you, where did you were you with him until he retired or moved on to Norwood or
we
whatever?
went to Kendall Morwood. That imploded on the boat ride from Hell after Fort William on our way back to Europe, where people got arrested, passports got confiscated, people got locked in the cabins got flooded. I woke up in the ceiling cavity and some fiberglass insulation.
That's good for you.
And that was pretty much the end of that team that one night.
Yeah. That was a real crazy team from what I've heard. It's just can you explain that a little bit? Like for those who don't know? What you're allowed to explain.
So there was a lot of excessive friction between team versus team manager. Team got on quite well amongst itself. But there was just this huge friction with the team manager and team owner. And it literally did explode in like this very drunken night on the ferry after Fort Bill. I mean, to give you an idea how drunken, my credit card bill from that trip was £830 at the bar. I'm sure that I must have bought someone a couple of drinks, surely, but I don't think that was all me.
That's next level. That's insane.
But yeah, Rennie pretty much flew home next day. I think I hung around for another week to get a lift to Maribor so I could somehow get a lift home from there or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, that it just showed like the stress and pressure of operating in a team environment. Sometimes it literally, if you have the wrong people together, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. I think that's another, like you look at these pro athletes and pro teams and stuff and you kind of forget that everyone's human again and everyone doesn't just work in unison and there's got to be friction in some places.
Yeah, I think it was the same year Rob Roscott made the point to me is like that from his perspective with syndicate at that point, he was like, pick people who work well together, then worry about if they can do their jobs. Yeah, and I thought that was a pretty good point.
It's a very good point, especially from Rob and like that career. Like he's obviously done that his whole life.
Yeah, like I mean, if that boat trip story is wild, I'm sure Syndicate have got plenty of stories that can kick that one out of the park.
Get redacted by the FBI and stuff like that, I bet. So what you kind of do after that then? Like obviously that went off in a bang. Like what was your kind of goals? Like what was your plan from there? Did you have one?
I just wanted to be a World Cup mechanic at that point. Like I'd had a taster for it and I kind of wanted to get a real paying job. At that point I was working ski seasons in Morzine in the winter and just trying to think. I was doing suspension servicing stuff in Morzine in the summer as well. So my summers were very full. And so that's kind of where one of the reasons why I came back to Oz, talked Aaron into starting NS Dynamics with me. And that meant I'd always have something to come back to after the race season. So like, to be able to come back and earn an income without having to try and get a new job every Australian summer. And so, yeah, basically did that, like Kenda Morwood, then Kenda Lapierre, then Da Vinci, then Canyon, and then Fox Race Support. And then that was the end of 2020. And then I was sort of a bit over it.
We'll jump back into the suspension servicing thing in a minute, but am I correct in saying you were Stevie Smith's mechanic for a while at Da Vinci?
Yeah, so 2011 through to 2016.
Yeah. What was it like? I mean, you've obviously worked for like Petey, you worked for Manar, like you've said, not Manar, sorry, Rennie, and all these other big, huge stars. What was it like seeing Stevie Smith kind of emerge as quickly and as crazily as he did?
It didn't seem that quick from my position, because the thing is, for a pro mechanic, until you've been around for a very long time, you're judged on basically the results of your rider. So in 2008, everyone thought I was amazing because I was Nathan Rennies' mechanic. But I didn't know a thing, but everyone just assumed that since you're apparently good enough to be there, you must be really good. And then when Nathan retired, you're basically in a situation where you've got to try and pick the right horse, because mechanic-rider relationship is quite important. It's something that builds up over time. And I was lucky. Stevie was a good horse. But, I could have quite easily gone with, I don't think I had many options, but I could have gone with another rider who'd just broken into the top 10, but that was actually their best ever career result, So there's very much a motivation to help your rider improve in that kind of situation, because you know that if they improve, they'll get paid more, and you in turn will probably get paid more, and you might both have jobs next year, which would be cool.
Really interesting. Never thought of that. That's really cool. But you would have seen like some epic battles and wrenching for him, like with G. Atherton, and like that was that turning. It's almost like you went from the turning point of downhill dying out, and then you've come back with this new guy, and it's building up again with like the G. Atherton and Stevie battles, and Bryce London Stevie battles as well. Like it would have been pretty cool to witness.
Yeah, that's something that you're so deep in it at the time, you probably don't appreciate it until retrospect, so to speak. With Stevie, it was kind of like, okay, you can top 10, let's get you on the podium. And it's like, okay, you made podium, let's move you up the podium. And then he finally won a race in the end of 2012, and then it's just like, right, if you can win one race, you can win lots of races. So let's try and win lots of races. And it's just that constant focus on moving forward. So you don't really appreciate where you are. You just look at how you can be better.
You weren't very present. You were just looking at that next result, next process.
Yeah, and also the nature of working at races, most times that you have a result on a Sunday, you're like, oh, sweet, we made podium today. And now I've got to pull down the tent, do this, do that, get everything packed up, hit the road by 8 p.m. because I've got to be in this venue at this time. So you just there's not really the time to sit back and appreciate what's been accomplished.
Yeah, because you're driving the bus, you're doing everything really. Like you and the manager are the foundation of the whole team, realistically.
Yeah. So you're pretty much just so flat out. I mean, that season where Stevie won the overall in 2013, we did party after Leogang. It was pretty epic. And I ended up I think I was sick in bed for 3 weeks after that, like just completely done, because the last 2 weeks of that season, I think I averaged out at between 2.5 and 3 hours sleep a night.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And it was only then, like, I got back to Morzine and I actually had his race bike with me. And took off a ride down the coffee shop, and I was like, sat there with Kilmurray and just was just like, holy shit, like, wow. That's pretty surreal.
That's a sick, yeah. I guess, like, from that, I don't know how you guys would have operated. Like, I don't know how mechanics and even like the media crew, it seems crazy how little sleep humans can kind of run on. And you guys prove it. Like, how do you kind of work? Do you even work by the end of that week? Like, is your body just completely done?
You definitely pay the price physically. Over a season, like, you get less and less fit, more worn down, and you're more uncomfortable in your own body. And I think all the people who are doing those jobs are just people who are good at coping with that. Because you're right, like the media guys, they're working till 4 a.m. and just sleeping in the media center, and then they're up the hill at 7. And then mechanics are in this position where if they make a mistake, their rider could quite easily get injured and things like that. So there's a huge amount of pressure, and I think the people who end up in those positions are people who do really well under pressure. So, but as I said, you definitely pay the price physically over time, which is one of the reasons why I left when I did, because I just really didn't think I could physically do it any longer.
Obviously, like the whole Da Vinci thing came to I won't talk about it too much because it's not the best subject, but like obviously that kind of came to a halt quite abruptly after the passing of Stevie. Like it seemed like the next year they were kind of just demotivated with everything.
What sort of happened there is the Da Vinci team, Da Vinci Global Racing, even without Stevie, could have continued. We had Mark Wallace, we had Magnus Manson, we had Bragi, Vestovic. But Da Vinci themselves pulled the pin in a fairly, I guess you'd say, stealthy fashion. Like,
okay.
When you fire people but don't actually tell them that they're fired. I would refer to that as being stealthy. So
Or you just rock up to the pits and your truck's not there.
It was pretty close. Like they sort of they dropped everyone, but at World Championships in 2016. So
it's not great timing for any athlete or anyone looking for a job in the next year.
No, especially when you don't get told until the day after World Champs. So everyone's already left. You can't walk around the pits and find a job because the pits is just a car park.
Yeah, that's insane.
So yeah, that triggered my move to Canyon, and managed to get both Mark Wallace and Gabe Fox to follow me there as well. So we kind of get the team together, different label. Yeah,
that's all right. That's where Mark and Gabe went. What was it like going to Canyon? Because that's a whole different culture change from what I can see from the outside. Or is it not that big of a deal?
When you've worked in one team for 8 years or whatever it was at that point, to suddenly shift to another team, different brand, different people, there's a whole lot of adjustment that you have to go through. The Canyon team, there was definitely a lot more politics and agendas going on. So it was not nearly so simple. Like at Da Vinci, there was me and Gabe on the road, basically. And if I wanted something, I asked Gabe and he said yes or no.
Yeah.
And that was kind of as far as it went. Whereas, Canyon was very complex and a lot more corporate in a lot of the ways which we consider corporate to be negative. It was also good. Like, I got the chance to be on a team with Troy and Aaron and stuff like that. So it was super, super cool in lots of ways. It was nice to have a fresh start. But ultimately, I sort of felt, like after 3 years there, that the politics were getting in the way of performance, and I'd always been attracted to the performance side. So that sort of irritated me a bit.
Got to be pretty good working with Ronzo and with Troy. Like that's
they're good eggs. Like they are definitely good eggs. Those two.
That's like that. It goes back to your choosing your horse and having that relationship. Like they have to be the tightest on the circuit at the moment, for sure.
Yeah, the fact that they have a friendship outside of their working relationship, I think, is amazing for both of them. And I definitely envy them that. I think that's pretty much the best thing you could have, in either person's position.
100%. Yeah.
Apart from like when, one of them has to tell the other one that they're wrong or something like that. That might be a bit more difficult.
I'm happy to say on record, I don't think Aaron would care in either position. There's a certain respect they have, and it's a certain working relationship they have that is, it proves like it's the same with Loic and his mechanic. I can't remember his name, but
Jack.
Yeah, they seem to have the same kind of relationship, like a certain respect, and they understand each other so
it's
well.
Knowing that each person is doing their job as best they can, like to the best of their abilities, and sort of respecting that, I think.
Yeah. And you're both there for the same reason at the end of the day. You both want to stand on that top step.
That's exactly it. So, but it takes quite a while to build that mutual respect and that sort of relationship, I think.
And after Canyon, is that when you started again in delving deep into the suspension stuff with Fox and working with those guys?
I'd been doing the suspension for my riders at races for quite a long period. Probably 6 or 7 years by that point.
Yeah, right.
So the difference was, instead of tuning and preparing suspension just for a rider or a team, I then switched over to working for a manufacturer and then doing the race support and service. So it was a super cool experience, and I'm really glad I did it. It was.
Yeah.
You could really see the difference in how things like that are run versus the teams, because I think companies like Fox and so on have sufficient budget to do things on a different scale to the way that the race teams are run. So that was quite eye-opening. And it was also just interesting to see into that side of like the behind the scenes of, you know, a suspension company and so on at a World Cup level.
With your experience of messing around with and working on the athlete's suspension, was that ever taken quite seriously at Fox? Like, did you have a good part in any of the technologies and stuff that were coming out, or?
No. It would be the short answer to that. Basically, and this isn't just Fox, this is sort of suspension companies in general in terms of their race support. They're not, for the most part, athletes aren't given anything that's particularly special. It's generally pre-production product for the following season. So there's not crazy secret unicorn tuning going on for the most part.
Yeah.
The crazy secret stuff is, oh shit, we've got a problem like this. You know, we've got this problem with it. This product.
Yeah.
How are we going to fix it here on this weekend at the race? Like, you know, otherwise it's going to be an absolute shit show. So it's a bit different. But yeah, still super interesting.
Never thought Fox had issues with their shocks though.
No one has issues.
No. Was that in the era of the air cans exploding, 2012?
No, this was the first year on the current rear shock range, and I think the current probably soon to be superseded fork technology.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is why it's pre-production stuff. You don't know that you're going to have certain problems until you put 50 World Cup riders on it. Then you see the problems pretty quickly, and you have to be able to react to that. And hopefully, the problems are fixable. You know,
always going to happen. What? Obviously, you're working on consumer products at the moment. Like, yeah, every day weekend warrior that wants to get the best out of the suspension. But you've also worked on some of the hardest riding people ever to grace this planet. What are some of the main differences you've had to tune out or tune customly for each market?
It's a good question. I think when you build a fork or a shock specifically for a professional level rider, they're very much able to use it in a way that you can specify in order to get the most out of it. So you basically, here's a fork, it's really, really good, but only if you ride like this. So you need to ride like this. And they're very good at going up and applying technique in that way to get the most out of it. Whereas when you get down to more consumer level, people are a lot less aware of how they're riding. So it has to be a bit more idiot proof, so to speak. Like a little bit more general, less specific. And that's just down to the fact that, you know, a professional can go out and just smash runs at exactly 95% or whatever intensity you specify. Whereas you and myself or whatever, we're going to vary somewhere between 60 and 105% on any given run, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that has to be taken into account.
Yeah, I've never thought of it like that. But I have thought, so personally, I'm a very lazy rider on the bike. I don't move around heaps. I'm the opposite of those guys that pump and move around heaps on the bike. So through some suspension designs and kinematics that require that, they just don't work for me. But then you have other people that have got that move around and are quite active. So the suspension platform is going to be completely different from them. Do you think rider style is quite overlooked when it comes to suspension tuning?
It depends on what the goal is.
Mm.
So you could have, on one hand, you could have the goal of having positive rider feedback, making someone happy.
Mm.
You know, like just, yeah, my bike feels good, thank you, like stoked. On the other hand, you have quantifiable performance.
Yeah.
And on the quantifiable performance side, there's no such thing as rider style. There's only technique. So it doesn't matter if someone thinks, you know, and this could even be a professional rider, oh, that just isn't my style. It's like, well, this is the technique you need to apply to make the bike go as fast as possible. So if you want the bike to go as fast as possible, apply that technique. And the responsibility there lies on the rider. On the feel-good side of it, it's basically like, you know, is your couch comfortable? Yes or no? Would you like more cushions or a duvet or something like that?
Yep. That's one way to
do you want me to move the TV so you can see it? So, yeah, and everyone falls somewhere between those two extremes. I guess doing tuning, a lot of it relies on the communication and understanding what people are looking for. And, you know, from your example just then, if I gave you something and told you it was as good as possible, but you have to be dynamic on the bike, you might just be like, this is shit, dude. Give me my money back, you know? I ordered not being dynamic and you've given me dynamic. So so yeah, it comes down to what the individual is going to be most satisfied with, I think.
You find the information. So obviously you can communicate to the pro rider that they have to do something and they have the technique to do that, which is why they're a pro rider. That's what they're good at, is they can pick up a unicycle and ride it faster than anyone. Is their feedback then better than general population's feedback because they understand what they need more? Or is the level of the current level of general riders is so damn high when it comes to suspension knowledge?
Professional riders are much better because they're in their role, they're constantly having to give feedback. So as they develop from a junior through to a full pro, they evolve that and learn it. So they're very good at just sort of coming down and giving you like the key information points. People who aren't familiar with that situation tend just to tell you a fairly random story, which may or may not be entertaining and may or may not contain useful information. The biggest issue with the general consumer kind of thing, non-professionals, is the amount of misinformation that they consume, and that leads them to desiring things which would be inappropriate, and also misnaming things and having a misconception about what they actually need.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of education required.
I mean,
when you're working with people like that,
there was that period which I refer to as Gwingate, where someone published somewhere that Aaron Gwynn's suspension is super hard and the rebound is super slow and all this crazy stuff. Next minute, everyone is running 10% sag, and they're just like, my suspension doesn't work. It's not right. And it's like, it's because you're doing 1/10 of the speed as Aaron Gwynn into the same stuff.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I would say that about 90% of dedicated mountain bikers, like people who are just into it, could have a much better setup with exactly what they have on their bike right now. not including volume, spaces, and air that needs to go inside or come out of, shock or fork or tires or whatever.
Yeah. Just a quick click here or there.
Yeah. Or in some cases, 20 clicks because they're that far away.
That has to be Fox. They're the only ones who got 20 clicks.
Yeah, probably.
What are some of the biggest miscommunications and misconceptions that you hear around, I guess, low speed compression, rebound? Like, what are some feelings that people are getting, but they have been told it's the wrong thing? Like, what are the common ones that you see around that? Or is that a whole other podcast?
That might be podcast 2. Products that have external high and low speed rebound adjustment on them. Basically, you can't set them up by feel. So anyone who has two clicky things for those two things is probably not running the most ideal setting they could. That would be one of the key things that you see a lot. The other thing is the classic, just adding more air and volume reducers to get the feeling that they're looking for, instead of looking to the more complicated side of using clicky things.
I guess we'll touch on that first point a little bit. Why do you think people can't feel the differences with the high speed, low speed knobs? Like, is it because those vibrations are so fast that feel is almost unquantifiable?
It's to do with this. This is also happens on the compression side, but not nearly as much, because people don't play with their compression to the extent they play with rebound, because they generally can feel rebound more in the car park, so they'll fiddle with it more. But I guess what the issue is a low speed adjuster tends to have an effect through the entire speed range. So it will have a certain effect on high speed, even though it's a low speed adjuster, whereas a high speed adjuster will tend to only affect the higher speed range, but there is also an interaction point that it will influence as well. So that basically means you can click the wrong thing and get the change in feeling that you're looking for, but be getting it the wrong way.
Yeah.
Like getting painkillers from a drug dealer, not from the pharmacy.
Cheaper.
There's better ways to do things, people.
So damn cheap from a dealer, though, Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, on the air spring side of things, like, why isn't more volume reducers more better? Like I thought.
It depends what flavor they are.
Okay.
They come in all those pretty colors, and if you're putting raspberry flavor in a lime fork, you're probably wrong.
Yeah.
I guess what it is for any given person and given bike, there's sort of kind of two solutions. There's something that feels okay that they can ride, and that's where most people end up. But then there's something that feels okay that they can ride that has every individual part of the suspension system working properly in unison with everything else. So the right amount of ramp up, the right amount of like air pressure or sag, the right amount of compression support, the right rebound speed and all that sort of thing. And there's just no way that anyone without pretty significant testing equipment, like dynos and data acquisition and so on. There's just no way they can even be aware that what they have isn't right.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Do you think it's at a general level, not races that are chasing the millisecond, but at the general level, is it that important to be chasing? Like, if it feels good, it feels good, right? For most people, and they've still got a smile on their face at the end of the day.
Wherever the stoichiometer is obviously the key metric here.
Yeah.
If the stoichiometer is like hard against the stop, just going crazy, like, you're obviously winning.
That's what the O-ring on the fork is for, right? That's to tell you how
that is the stoichiometer, isn't it?
Yeah. That's what I thought.
The only thing is that correct setup then influences how well the rider rides, and there's basically a positive feedback loop of, if the bike's set up well, it behaves well, which gives the rider confidence. If the rider has confidence, their riding technique improves, which improves how well the bike works because their technique is correct. And since it improves how well the bike works better, which makes them feel more confident. So you just get this whole loop of the bike going better and the rider going better. And you end up going faster, but you also end up being a lot safer, even though you're going faster. And that means you actually have to go out and buy a new stoichiometer because it's gone round the clock a few times.
Just spun off its hinges.
Yeah, and when
O-ring's
people
worn off.
Yeah, and when people experience that, it's pretty game changing. They're like, but you do have to go at least down the custom tuning option to get near that. You're not going to get that with off the shelf product because it's not what off the shelf product is for.
Find it hard with off the shelf product is only going to cater for 75% of riders, just as an estimate, maybe.
I think I view off the shelf product as the whole goal of those companies is to ensure that no one has a negative experience. And through not being negative, it's a positive experience. So, but performance or confidence or anything like that, or safety doesn't actually come into it. It's more for you to play around with your clicky things and your pump thing and all that sort of stuff for 10 minutes, ride up and down the driveway, bounce up and down, and be like, sweet, I'm going to go and ride my new product that I just dropped $1,000 on. I'm going to go and enjoy it. And that's super important. Like, you don't want to buy a new fork or shock and then spend 3 weeks in your garage trying to set it up.
I do. Why get new bikes all the time? I'm like, let's build something else and waste more money. But
it's not a waste of money, dude.
What's the
investment in your future?
Yeah. Tell the banks that. So what is like the main thing you're kind of doing when you look at a custom tuned shock for a customer? Like, how's the process going? What do you kind of have to do?
Step one, fix inherent problems. So like a good example would be calibrating the bushings on a fork. So to ensure that there's minimal friction and really good alignment and so on with the lowers and the uppers. So go through and fix like inherent problems that exist. Either, bushings in forks is a general thing. And then certain models or brands will have, more specific problems. So you sort of go through, fix that, then the two next goals are to add in or improve upon or hide away characteristics that are desirable or not desirable, or needed or not needed. And then there's also to improve the actual functionality of the suspension itself. So you're then talking about things like damper response, hysteresis, and things like that, which sort of refers to how good the fork or shock is at basically going up and down really fast.
Yeah.
But that all translates to the rider into something which gives them more grip and more control. It's more predictable.
Yeah.
Causes less fatigue, and ultimately makes the whole riding experience better.
Am I right in saying that you and Aaron from NS were some of the first people to look at bushing alignment and creating the tools for those? I thought I heard that somewhere.
Potentially in Australia, yes. Okay. Globally, no.
Yeah.
Definitely not. But I mean, NS Dynamics, when it was set up in November 2009, I'd tell people within the industry the concept, and they'd just be like, "Oh, really? You think that's going to work?" And it's like, yeah, I think it will work.
Yeah. A straight tube is going to pass through a straighter tube. If it's not aligned, it's not going to pass through. It's not rocket science right here, right?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah. But I mean, fork bushing, that's probably like one of the key things. Like massive gains from, not a massive investment.
I definitely noticed it when I've had it done before. It's not like some people will make it out to be as if it's a huge fault from manufacturing and all these type of things from the big players as well. But I always look at it as if, they're making millions of those things. If they're not always going to be 100%, like there's a certain level.
The fact that companies like Fox and RockShox can pump out the hundreds and thousands of units they do in that type of product, and they work as well as they do, that is amazing. Like, it's honestly, like, to have that level of tolerance and quality control over that larger quantity is, you should definitely give them a high five.
Yeah. I mean, they've all had the issues and stuff, right? But remember that time that Toyota almost killed a bunch of people because they forgot to put a floor mat correctly in their electric cars. Like, it happened. I mean, like, it can happen to anyone.
Yeah, there's always mistakes, and if we're perfectly honest, like, I can't think of any like really, really bad suspension issue in the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 years from any
nothing that's going to nothing that's going to kill anyone. Like,
there's been like, oh yeah, that's like, there's going to be a revision and that part's getting changed and that problem's going to go away. But yeah, quite honestly, it's amazing the quality of components we're getting for the price and so on.
What do you you're kind of known as well for having heard some rumors that some people at Maydena had some pretty special things in their forks. Like, you're known for doing your own kind of internals and doing your own thing with inshore shocks and forks. What kind of led you down that path of doing your own thing? And do you think it's funny that you left uni for being a mechanical engineer and now you're making your own stuff within forks? Like,
I don't know if funny is the right term. Ironic, maybe.
Yeah. You just took 10 years to do the 4-year course, and you did it with a lot more drinking, but like you got there in the end.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so the first part of that question, how did I get there? That was from doing tuning at racing. So we sort of started off through just doing minor internal improvements. But yeah, after a few years, it pretty much morphed to just full custom internals, and making sure that it looked sponsor correct on the outside, because it's the sponsors who are, you know, footing the bill at the end of the day. So, you know, I was being paid to do it, so I'm not, you know, you can't go for self-promotion sort of thing. So that's how I got into it. It's very ironic that I almost went down the path of doing the correct qualification for what I'm doing now. Yeah. And I have been finding that I'm having to self-educate more and more components of what I probably should have done at university.
Yep.
In order to keep going down that path. So yeah, I do sort of custom internals for the RockShox Super Deluxe coil and air shocks, and for all the charger-based forks. I'm hoping to expand upon that through, you know, different brands and so on. It's just a pretty big task, to be honest.
Yeah, I can imagine.
To come up with something, to do the necessary testing and development, to fund production, and for also it has to be a good enough improvement for what it costs.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you know, you're not going to pay me $500 to make your fork feel 2% better.
No. Yeah. Exactly.
So it's definitely a bit of a challenge.
Are you able to talk about some of the things you are doing, for example, in the boxer? Like, obviously we can't say who's got it and what's happening, but what do you kind of, I think I heard there's a coil in one side.
Yeah, so I did a coil conversion kit in conjunction with Senan from Race Only Springs, who does progressive fork springs. And that was because I'd helped him in the Da Vinci days develop a progressive coil for the boxer. And then RockShox went and changed, you know, went to a new model boxer, and it's like, it's air only. And like I said, it's like, I've got all these springs and they don't fit anything. So we came up with a conversion kit for that. So that's kind of like bolt into any 2019 plus boxer. And then for the Charger 2.1 series dampers, so it goes across Lyric and Zeb as well, I do an upgrade rebound piston, and then a modified compression assembly, which basically on the compression side you gain sort of grip and support, as well as reducing harshness as well and hand feedback. And on the rebound side, it it improves the high-speed rebound, and improves the bump response of the fork as well.
Yeah, right. That's definitely. Yeah, I've seen the coil conversion and felt the coil conversion, and man, that thing they're so supple off the top. It's ridiculous. Like if a fly lands on them, they drop in sag. Like they're so smooth. What is the benefits of going to coil up front, and is it suitable for most riders in your opinion?
The benefits with coil are that it's far more consistent than air. The force in your coil springs literally dependent on how far it's been compressed, and that's it. Like, and that can vary maybe 3%, depending on how fast it's hit or whatever. An air spring varies on ambient temperature, built up temperature from all the bumps you've already hit, altitude, and then how fast you hit it. So you end up with a very significant variation in how it responds, approximately about 20%, in reference to that 3% I just gave you for coil.
Yeah.
So what that makes for the rider is a system which is far harder to predict how it's going to respond.
Yeah.
So your ability to know how much to lean through a corner, like how much grip you're going to have and how your bike's going to respond to a tree root or whatever, it's just not so good. The problem is coil requires far more attention to detail with your damper setup, particularly with the compression settings.
Yep.
And that plus the fact that, you know, people generally have to try 2, sometimes even 3 coil springs to be sure about, you know, which one's the right one to go for. All that sort of added stuff around or complexity sort of defines who it's good for and who it's not good for. You know, if you can't be bothered with all that, don't bother with coil. If you are willing to put a bit of work into having an amazing bike setup that's, you know, basically lower maintenance and better, then do it.
Yeah, and it comes back to that mass companies are just making stuff that people can get stoked on. Like, some people don't want to faff around with 6 different coils to find the correct sag and ride for you.
Yeah, you spend $1,500. Your fork turns up in the mail. You put it on in the garage. You're like, oh, it's got the wrong spring on it. I need to go and order the right spring.
Yeah,
like that is not stoked.
No.
Whereas, I mean, the thing is too, it's economics. An air fork compared to a coil fork, an air fork requires, you know, 50 cents more seals, a couple of O-rings, and doesn't require this huge amount of inventory of different spring rates.
Yeah. You just need to keep air in the warehouse. Like, it's not that hard.
Yeah, like they have to, like, obviously import air from wherever it's made.
Yeah.
And some of those cool colored tokeny things, and maybe give someone a dodgy little shock pump with a gauge that, you know, does a bit of wobbling and stuff.
Yeah. Actually, yeah. It's funny the amount of attention and money people can spend on suspension and still use that shock gauge that they got with their original bike from 10 years ago. It's amazing.
Yeah, I did find out how expensive digital shock pumps were the other day, and I sort of understood everyone's position after that. I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
They're not cheap. I get you.
I still need to get one, but I need one of those the Moto Air ones, because they're a longer shaft. The same shaft diameter, so they hit the same pressure, but they're a longer shaft, so it takes less pumping.
Oh, okay. And you think it's optimum to have a longer shaft but pump less?
Yeah, 100%. I'm an efficient
man.
man.
What do you think about girth?
I'm still running 35 mil forks, man. But no, in all seriousness, I knew I was going to go down that route. God damn it. We just lost all our mature listeners, all 3 of them. But no, the Moto shock pumps, everyone should get one. They're so much better.
I'll take your advice on that. I'll report back in 50 words or less.
Thank you. Yeah. 51, no good. Won't read it, mate.
No good.
We'll start wrapping things up because it's getting to that time of night. Bit of a random question and something I wanted to ask you, because you've name dropped, I think, every name in mountain bike history. But who do you think's been one of the most influential people in the industry to you in your career, and why?
Oh, I'm going to feel bad answering this because I'm going to feel like there's probably people who have helped me massively that I have overlooked or haven't appreciated, or may not have even, might have just taken for granted or something. So I guess I should preface this with an apology to all those people. I'd be tempted to say Sven Martin, though, because Sven Martin's very influential through his work, and always has been. He's been one of the prime storytellers about World Cup racing for a very long time. And I guess I worked out at some point that you keep the photographers happy and they look after you. So I've definitely got Sven to thank in terms of giving me, extra media exposure and stuff like that, which has probably been of great benefit to my reputation through purely through his work, not through mine.
Yeah.
Stevie Smith helped me out a bit through just being good at what he did, nothing to do with what I was doing. That's a difficult question to answer. I think maybe if you go to my funeral or something, then we might see who's like steps up and has something good to say.
Be mountain bike lords everywhere. No, I think Sven Martin is an amazing storyteller, amazing photographer. All those public things. He's a legend of a human, but I don't think people see how much he does in the background of the sport, connecting the industry. That is so massive. Like the amount of people that have told me things, it's like, whoa.
He is almost like the center of the web of mountain bike racing. He talks to so many people that he's got the inside line on so many different things, and has a much better idea of what actually has happened or is going to happen or happening, whatever. He works very hard to portray the sport in the media in a way that's beneficial to the sport. Like not just through being a good photographer, but also just working a lot harder than he has to do that, to get those super cool photos or whatever, and to get the interesting stories out there and stuff as well.
Yeah, and that's what differentiates him and Mad Dog and Dan. Like those guys are doing it for themselves. They love photography and whatnot, but they love the sport so much more, and they just want to promote it, and it's so good.
Yeah, like those guys just work so hard. I mean, doing what they love, but the amount that they go above and beyond is pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, shout out to those guys. I need to get Sven on here one day. Once he replies to my messages, doesn't he know who I am? Like, no, it will happen. He's obviously a busy man.
I just can't imagine Sven Martin sitting still for that long. Like, you need to get him when he's on a flight. That's what you need to do.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I'm sure the reception's just as good as it is in Maydena.
Well, you're high up. It's like being at the top of the hill here.
Yeah, that's how it works. Science. Yeah. Sven Martin, if you're listening, reply to my message, please. what is some advice that you'd give to someone looking to break into the mechanic industry and work at the top of level of that industry of being a wrench and wrenching on the best bikes in the world?
You just have to find a way of putting yourself as close to that world as you possibly can to get onto people's radar. Mm-hmm. So, I did it through working in a bike shop in Morzine. I'm sure people have done it through being, working in shops in Whistler. There's, being the not great job of being a national team mechanic at World Champs, because usually not very well paid. Things like that, or also if they're able to come across connections with riders who are already racing at that level. So, you'll basically get, the key is to get noticed and hope that someone just kind of goes like, oh yeah, I know a guy. There's this guy, he'll come and do a lot of work for bugger all money.
There's another example of that seems just like a younger version of you, really, within Alex Present, AJ.
Oh yeah.
He just came out of WA, went to Melbourne, registered on races, made friends with Jackson and got on the world circuit, and now he's at Yeti under Polar Bear and working with those guys. It's just proof that extra work and being around the industry makes it so much easier and rewarding.
Yeah, Alex actually rang me up at NS Dynamics out of the blue, 7 or 8 years ago. And he's just like, I want to be a World Cup mechanic. How do I do it? No, I can't remember what I said to him. Probably said, don't bother, mate. There's better things to do.
Go to uni, do mechanical engineering.
Yeah. But yeah, he's done when he actually, must have been, 2017 or something like that. He was working for Kona, I think.
Yeah, it might have been 18.
18?
17, 18.
And he came up to our pits and came up to me and was like, do you know who I am? And I was just like, I have no idea, dude. And he explained to me, I was just like, holy fuck, that is awesome. He actually made the dream come true. And yeah, you just literally just have to chase it, mate. Just throw yourself at it.
It's a crazy concept. It's scary, but doing it the way you did is quite interesting, where you didn't really have plans. And you kind of just made it. Obviously you made it happen because you wanted to be there, but you let it happen the right way as well.
Yeah, there was definitely, just living very much in the present. I think when I moved to London, I had enough money for 3 weeks or something like that, and a job lined up. I moved to Morzine with a bed for one night and enough money for a week. One-way ticket. It's just putting yourself in a position where you have to achieve what you want to achieve, I guess.
Think or swim, make it happen.
Well, yeah, exactly. Sinking to the bottom and walking out doesn't really work.
Is there anything you would have done differently or changed with the pathway that, other than that boat ride, maybe? But
it's a pretty good story. Everyone's got to have a high watermark of how hard they partied. No, I'm pretty happy with what I've done, and also what I haven't done, I guess. I haven't got arrested yet, so I've got to be happy with that, I think.
You've got to do something pretty bad to get arrested in Tasmania, so I think you're pretty safe.
That's why I'm here.
Especially Maydena. I've never seen a policeman or even close to there. Maybe once.
I think he comes out once a week.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Checks up on a few people on the houses and then, yeah.
Yeah, I think he just turns up, counts the houses and goes.
They're still here. Yeah. So there's nothing you think it all just ends up working in the best, really, the way you get there.
Yeah, I mean, there's stuff like I definitely would have liked to have been working with a rider and won the world champs. That was always like, I always used to joke to Stevie that when he won world champs, he'd have to give me his helmet because he's quite possessive of his Red Bull helmets. And he was just like, yeah, okay, yeah, all right.
That's why I never won one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just pulling the brakes at the line just enough.
Or tipping over in the first corner.
I just remembered that. Yeah, that was brutal. That sucked. Yeah.
Yeah, the conversation of, hey, Steve, do you want to go and check the first corner out? Looks like it's blown out. No, I'll be fine. There you wait.
Dude, yeah, I forgot about that. When was that? That was 15, 16?
2013.
13. Oh, Jesus. That was a while ago.
Yeah. But it gave him motivation to go and win overall. So
yeah.
Must
have checked every first corner since then.
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, that was brutal. All right. This one's, you mentioned music and stuff earlier on. You're obviously a pretty big fan of music and stuff. What music do you listen to kind of get motivated? Or, if you're in a spot where you don't want to be doing something, is there something that you listen to get G'd up?
Drum and bass.
Drum and bass.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that?
In fact, some kid was in here this morning and he walked out and he's just like, he said something like drum and bass. Like the world would be so much worse without it or something like that. That's just like, boo.
Is he New Zealander?
No, he's Will, who works down here. I think he's from up Queensland way.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Cool. DNB is was way bigger in NZ than in Oz, eh?
It is, yeah. Like those guys flop on it. I was chatting to Haz the other week, and yeah, she's been down there and she's gone from country into DNB. Like it's massive. And I guess London would have been the same, right? Around that.
I caught it from a Kiwi I worked with. The same guy went out to Morzine with Des. So, and yeah, the funniest thing was I came back to Oz one summer and someone asked me what music are you into? I'm like, drum and bass. I'm like, what's that? Like tribal drums or something? Like it just
and a cello.
Pendulum were huge in London and Australia hadn't heard about them.
It's crazy.
Pretty weird.
Yeah. I think, the English underground drum and bass scene would have been huge in those 2000s, like late 90s and stuff. I think there would have been some big scenes happening.
Yeah. That was hard on the body. Yes.
I bet in every way possible. Well, no better note to end on. So thanks so much. Thanks so much for coming on, man. To be honest, it's very hard to find information about you online. So I had zero preparation.
Oh, good. I deliberately try and slide under the radar. I don't know if it's just my personality or something, but
no, I rate it. It's hard for when you're trying to interview someone. You're like, what have they done? But to hear what you've done and where you've been and have this first pod is great, because I definitely think we should do another one in the future, because I think it'd be cool.
Sweet. I would be keen. It's been really good being here.
Perfect. Well, I'll let you get to dinner and enjoy the rest of your night. Thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, no worries. Anytime, man. We'll speak soon.
All right. See you, mate.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. There was some super good content in there. Man, that guy's lived a life. Everything from England, Morzine, to now. He's been everywhere and worked for some of the best. So I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to help support us by supporting our sponsors, Trek, Tailored Trails, FE Sports, NS Dynamics, Frank Mountain Bike, Apparel, Dirt Surfer, Crush, and Fist. Man, that list is getting long, and it may be getting longer. Anyway, if you can't support them by grabbing any of their gear, jump over to the merch store, beyondtape.com, grab a t-shirt, grab some mud guards, help me out, help keep this thing going, and support the podcast for free by just telling your mates, telling your grandma, telling your grandpa, telling your neighbour, telling the police officer as you're on the side of the road about the podcast and get them listening. Anyway, thanks, and until the next one, make sure you're having a bunch of fun.